Beautiful. All right. Welcome everybody again to our regional housing forums. This is the month of October, and we do have at least a new face for me and for some of us this morning. So maybe we can just do a quick round of introductions. Um, Andrew, why don't you kick us off? I'm glad you could finally make it to one of these.
All right, me too. Uh, I'm Ander Tabo, and I direct the adult education program for RSU 24. And so it's Eastern Hancock County, Western Washington County. We have a number of participants also from that area. So interested in housing, know that many of our students have housing um, concerns and barriers to um, quality, I'd say, housing, and year-round, really heated places and that type of thing. So curious to see where the conversation is, but also, if long-term it might be a place where we could offer any programming if there was a housing community somewhere, something like that.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to pick your brain about other regional struggles with housing or needs for housing or ideas for housing. I think that'll be great. Uh,
Thanks.
so I'm Greg Paduk, regional planner here at HCPC, primarily doing housing and transportation planning. And we started these forums, August, I want to say. Going for a few months now. And I'll pass it over to Olivia, who's also been helping, you know already.
I'm also a regional planner at HCPC. I've been doing our broadband and digital opportunity / equity work, and helping out with all sorts of things from housing to climate and community resilience, economic development, working waterfront, however I can plug and play. And I'm going to pass it over to Josh because he's unmuted.
I am Josh McIntyre. I'm town manager of Gouldsboro. A little over close to 2 years ago, I guess, one of our select board members had applied for a grant, and we conducted a housing study with Camoin Associates covering both Gouldsboro and Winter Harbor, showing the needs that we have going forward and the current stock. We've been involved with the Schoodic Area League of Towns that HCPC has been facilitating for a year and a half. And one of the things that we're really interested in is possibly working on a nonprofit housing trust or something to work on housing issues across the four Schoodic communities.
Yeah, and real quickly on that, in a meeting with folks from the Blue Hill area that I had last week, that sort of conversation also came up. And it's come up time and time again, but there was a little more in depth and more interest in looking into doing the same for the Blue Hill region. And so I think through some means, doing more research and talking to folks about that, it sounds really worthwhile from HCPC's end and getting all of these folks, other folks involved and how something like that can realistically happen. So that's on my list of things to really get more into as we move forward, because I think it could be obviously a great asset for both regions. Then real quickly, Bob and then Alan.
Hey, Andrew. Uh, Bob DeForest.
You
We've
know each
known
other,
each other for
obviously.
many years. But
Okay.
so I'm the project manager for Maine Coast Heritage Trust for Eastern Hancock, and my involvement has been through MCHT owns a few properties in the Goldsboro, town of Goldsboro, and one in particular that we've been working with Josh and Greg and others on setting aside a portion of that property for workforce housing. So it's currently held by our Conservation Limited Development LLC, a subsidiary of MCHT, with the goal of transferring about 30 plus acres of a 100-acre parcel to the town of Goldsboro or another workforce housing entity. I'll pass it to Alan.
Okay, I'm Alan Colbank. I'm from the Chamber of Commerce and the Byway Commission, and I also have some short, short-term rentals. And so I'm interested from that point of view too, and what we can do with towns to make it easier to build things and to get the components in place to get make if you want to do a project that you could have some certainty from the start about whether it would be able to finish or not. And and another issue I've just researched is kind of small municipal waste systems that's kind of a holdup in a lot of towns that in terms of development. So yeah,
Alan, which chamber are you working with?
the Schoodic area chamber out of Winter Harbor.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks. Okay, so we want to start things today, kind of just recapping the summit that we just hosted, getting your thoughts and feedback. Josh and Bob are both there, but for anyone that was not able to attend, HCPC, we've been planning for several months now what we are calling a Regional Developers Summit, and we hosted it on Friday at the Schoodic Institute. It was a pretty nice mix of folks from different areas of work and areas of the region. And the essential goal was just to get everyone in one place at one time and start facilitating some conversations and sharing some ideas and getting everyone, not if they were already on the same page, but in the same headspace and mindset for finding solutions to obviously some of the challenges that we're all facing regarding creating housing and developing housing. So feedback we've received so far has been generally positive. Well, I guess all positive so far. No one's really complained too much, which has been great. But if you were not there, it was essentially a three-part event. I gave a presentation on the Hancock County Housing Needs Assessment, which I also did for this group a couple months ago. And that was recorded and that will be shared. And I can also send you slides to that presentation that I gave. And any other questions you have at some point, if you get a chance to dive into it, whether the presentation or the assessment itself, always willing to answer questions. After that presentation, we had a panel discussion with 4 different individuals. We had Bree Lacasse from Community Housing of Maine. We had Laura Redding, who is the Director of Affordable Housing with Developers Collaborative. Kathy Miller with Mount Desert 365. And then Dan Black with LB Development Partners. And he also is involved in another nonprofit. And asked us a handful of questions there, fielded some questions from the audience. We'll be interested to get any sort of thoughts and feedback on that. But overall, I think people were relatively engaged in that. Then after lunch, we had 3 different breakout rooms. Folks could choose where they wanted to go based on their interest and knowledge. We had a topic on housing partnerships. We had a room for addressing development costs, and then a third room discussing the management and balance of seasonal housing versus year-round housing. And maybe we can get into a little more specifics about those rooms and everything as we go along here. But that was a general day, and I think overall, like I said, a success, something that we might plan on looking into following up at some point. So I guess I can open up to questions, or maybe Bob and Josh, just your general feedback. Would be interested in hearing that.
I was interested. I attended the cost development breakout session after lunch. And I thought it was helpful that there were a number of factors that were pretty obvious that we've all heard, like lack of skilled labor to do a lot of the work, lack of overall contractors who seem to be mostly taken up by wealthier peoples who can build much bigger, larger margin houses along the coast. So with being so close to MDI and the draw to there, that pulls away people who would otherwise be doing smaller projects. And I was particularly interested and asked a question like, I really do think that the changes to the ADU laws are going to be a way forward to address some of the thing at scale. But I would really like to see like a demonstration project for some town or combination of towns who we could get a pre-approved single or one or two different type models, get 10 or 12 homeowners who want to add ADUs, all the same model, get one contractor in who will take all of them on so that we can kind of achieve some economies of scale and see how quickly we could add a dozen, new housing units in town. And I think the ADU model also helps increase homeowner value, provides possibly an little extra income, even if they are dedicated solely towards year-round rentals as opposed to seasonal rentals, which is also a huge problem for us around here. So overall, I thought the conference was great, and I was glad that I wanted to attend all the breakout sessions, but I was glad I attended the one that I did. So
Awesome. Because I think, well, obviously I facilitated one, Olivia facilitated another, so neither of us were able to attend that one. So that's great to hear. Um, Anything
Yeah, I was
else?
curious. I was curious to hear about that one and love to hear more notes from that session. That was the one I was split on. I went to the partnership conversation that Olivia facilitated, but I thought overall it was a great conference, and it was great to have some of the developers and people that have done larger projects to get their input, as well as having the work that's happening in Northeast Harbor as sort of a little bit more um, a project that's a little bit closer to home and also a little bit more relatable for the audience. So I thought it was a good mix of people on the panel, and it was just good to also connect with people there. So love to see the notes, especially from some of the other breakout sessions. And I think the big takeaway, the interesting takeaway was that Sherry Billings just talking about that the thoughts of Island Housing Trust moving off island and actually potentially expanding to at least into Trenton and maybe Lemoyne. So that's that was sort of the big breaking news that I got out of the session, was to hear that there might be expansion. I don't think it will go over to Schoodic,
Yeah,
but at least looking to expand there. So which is a big need.
that is, yeah, that's quite interesting. I had no idea they were even thinking about doing something like that. Okay, excellent. I appreciate your comments there. And notes from each of those breakout sessions will eventually be uh, aggregated and shared with everyone. And obviously, Avery was the one who facilitated Josh's session, and Jim was in there taking notes. Olivia facilitated the housing partnerships session in there, and Andy, our admin finance slash amazing person, took notes. And then I facilitated the seasonal year-round session, and we had someone taking notes in there as well. So we'll be able to provide some context. Do you feel like there was anyone missing from the summit, or anyone else that maybe should have been there, or other things that should have been addressed?
in our session, there was actually a contractor in there, which was great to hear his day-to-day experience and what he has said. So that was great. It would have been good if more could have attended, but they're probably all out trying to make a buck while the weather still holds. So can't expect
Yeah,
all
I'm
that.
sure.
But it was a really great perspective to have, and to answer a couple of the more pointed questions that I have that I've just been rattling around in my mind for a while. So
That's good. Yeah, I at least made an attempt to do outreach to a handful of different contractors and builders, and I'm glad that at least one of them showed up. I
yeah,
think I met him at some point. But yeah, getting them more involved in these conversations, I think is really valuable. It's you sound like you learned a lot.
Yeah, as
Um,
Josh pointed out, that's a real limiting factor right now, and it'd be great to, even if it's figuring in during the off season or sometime when more contractors can participate, and even having a specific doing interviews with some of the contractors in the area to get a better grasp of ways that might incentivize contractors to do work on workforce housing. So I know the even from out here, people are drawn to the island and the larger homes. So it's even out in Cherryfield, it's hard to get people to do work out this way. So
And I just want to follow up the comment that I made earlier when I asked him specifically if we had, you can have multifamily developments like an apartment building, but there's also the model out there that in some communities have like little kind of small house village, kind of like 10 or a dozen houses that are maybe all under 800 square feet. And I asked him, do you lose your economies of scale if those were spread out among 10 locations in a town, as opposed to all being on the same site? And what he had said was not really, because if you're doing the same model, and we know that even if we have to skip to a couple of different locations in town or 10 different locations, we can still do it if we're doing the same thing each time. And so that was why I trying to figure out ways that we could do it that's not just clustering all in one spot, because I think that in some cases that it's harder to find the right space. You get some pushback among some people who don't want all that clustered together for whatever reason. And then, finding the right space, and also like what we're going to find out with the land assessment is, can we even find space that has water accessible through wells and stuff like that, which on this area is seemingly increasingly difficult. And another thing he pointed out also is it just, as we all know, in so much of coastal Hancock and Washington County, just the geology of the area was so much shale and ledge right below ground, it massively increases some of the costs, because he said that he spent um, $20,000 just doing some blasting on a relatively small footprint, not even a whole basement size of a medium-sized house. So the increased cost just from where we are makes things a lot more difficult too.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. Um, yeah, we need to get more of them in a room or talk to those folks more. That's really good.
Yeah.
So I guess from my session, obviously the whole short-term rental debacle was part of that. It's kind of hard to avoid that topic, but tried to acknowledge that seasonal housing is more than just short-term rentals, and that there is a positive aspect of short-term rentals, but finding ways to regulate it, I think, was something that was identified as important. Really finding ways for municipalities to reap the benefits of I guess, from the financial side of short-term rentals. More or less, we talked about the lodging tax that's associated with it, and questions as far as where exactly that goes, and other ways that municipalities could, um, I guess, economically benefit from short-term rentals was a discussion that we had. Um, I guess those are some of the main takeaways from our discussion. Um, and more notes were taken by Holly, who was in there. But any other questions about that one that maybe I can address? But that'll all be shared at some point.
It would be really positive if the state would like share 50/50 the lodging tax with the municipality instead of just keeping the whole thing. Then that would have a lot more buy-in to the idea, see the benefit of it.
Yeah, we talked about doing some outreach to the state to find out exactly how and why it's dispersed the way it is. Something else I was just going to mention that I forgot. Oh, I lost it again. Anyway, Olivia, do you want to generally talk about what was talked about in the partnership meeting?
Yeah, I will say the partnership meeting, it was good. We had Dan Black in there, Bob was in there, Island Institute folks were in there, municipal folks were in there, other nonprofits and housing related nonprofits. And there was a lot of sharing about projects or models that people were seeing in other areas that they would be interested in hearing more in. And I would think that it would be really interesting for a future development summit to provide an opportunity for either people to share like a 5-minute overview of the projects that they are doing and the resources they have available in terms of thinking about I can't remember if it was Sherry or someone else at this point who was saying that their organization helps with some of the prepping land for development, but in ways that we can figure out how to put the puzzle pieces together to cut down costs for developers and municipalities and other organizations involved. There was also a little bit of focus on affordable development mixed with market rate development and the struggles of balancing that, especially if the market rate development, those units cost more because they are in some way subsidizing the affordable development. But I think there are some questions from the municipal side on that. But that seems like an interesting topic in collaboration, as well as the fact that developers don't necessarily want to be always owning the properties after they're developed, that most of the financial benefits to them occur during or after development and not necessarily in the maintaining of those properties. But also a question of in neighborhoods that or areas where there is market rate and affordable housing, how to navigate potential perceptions or tensions between folks. But I think that inside of that conversation, you're not necessarily telling the market rate folks, hey, you're subsidizing the affordable units, especially because that cost is done up front and you sell it for what you're going to sell it for. And that's the developer or owner's prerogative, as opposed to going through and telling what the entire cost breakdown was.
Olivia, do you remember them giving what they had a cost per unit in their pipeline? Any of the people who are doing multi-unit affordable housing development?
So Dan did not mention any specifics. I think it would be
so.
cool to get the folks at Great Falls Construction potentially here to talk. They've been doing more work in the Mid Coast, but I met them at the Maine Municipal Association conference and they talked about doing multi-use and mixed rate developments with municipalities in multiple towns in Maine, larger towns, but some of the principles still stand, and they'd be happy to talk with us about those projects.
Well, I want to give just a little data point. So the job I had before this was with a company in Portland called Evernorth, which is a
Oh yeah.
nonprofit that is a financial intermediary that handles low-income housing tax credits. They kind of Developers Collaborative and others who get the allotment from Maine Housing. Evernorth matches those up with investors who need to offset their federal income tax. So we had a whole group that works with developers across Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And 3 years ago, I remember specifically, so in Vermont only, our nonprofit was also a developer. In Maine and New Hampshire, we only worked with private outside developers, but in Vermont, we were also a major developer of the multi-family, multi-unit, low-income housing tax credit units. 3 years ago, the average price per unit in their pipeline was $430. And in Maine, it wasn't too far behind 3 years ago. So these, uh, without the subsidies, they absolutely would not be workable. And
Did you mean 430,000?
430, yeah. So if I don't know what I said, yes, $430,000 per
Okay.
unit
Yeah. Gotcha.
was what was in their pipeline at that time.
For like
Okay.
1,000 square foot, or what size?
On its
I mean,
cost.
they weren't too big. I can't remember the
Yeah, I
exact
imagine.
size of it, but I mean, it was certainly under like 1,200. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
this
want to
is another
say,
reason why I just, even then, I was like, this is nuts as a model going forward. I think that the ADU reform is really going to be a way to help address this whole thing. It has a lot of advantages in many ways.
Yeah.
I want to say that any numbers that were brought up, I don't think that was particularly brought up in that conversation, were at least closer to half of the number you just listed for Vermont. And
Do
some
you
of
think?
this in terms of redevelopment on land that has already been cleared, though,
Hmm.
and are repurposing municipal spaces or existing commercial spaces and revitalizing them.
Well, that most of these, I mean, well, some of the projects that we had would be redeveloping large, like maybe former industrial spaces or something, but sometimes it was just new ground up, permitting through occupation projects. So, but in general, that's what the numbers were. I just found it, I was new to that field. I found it astounding and problematic because if you don't get in with a developer who has the allocation of tax credits from Maine housing, then you just have to keep waiting until you do. And I think that that is not a model that was going to work, particularly in areas like this, because they also need to do it at a little bit more of scale. I don't see them reaching out into the really more rural areas, except for here and there.
Which one of the things that came up in that conversation that HCPC plans on following up with is there is some sort of list internally at Maine Housing of the developers that are kind of already in that affordable housing pipeline, but
Mhm.
it's not shared publicly. So reaching out and figuring out how do we access that, but also that would be really helpful as a public resource, especially for the state we're in now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really
Also
good point.
found,
Oh.
go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean it's a really good point that Josh makes. I mean, I think that's exactly right. That's the whole problem, building a stick-built house is just so expensive here. Even in places where there is land and so, like Goldsboro. There really needs to be like a halfway place. A mobile home is practical in that it's built in a factory, it's brought in on a truck, it's there in a day, and but it's not a real it's not a something that anybody wants to have as part of the development. And there needs to be something like a pre-built components that you bring in on a truck, and you have maybe a slab instead of a basement, because basements are expensive and difficult, as you pointed out. Like I built a house in Sorrento where I built the panels on on beforehand, and they had the siding on and everything, and I used a crane to put them in place, and that worked pretty well. And I think you could extend that type of a deal to where you could build the panels in a factory somewhere, bring them in on a truck, set them down on a slab, and you'd have a house built in a week or something, at least, the shell of it, and then you'd have to do the interior. But that would be kind of the efficiencies of a mobile home, but have a nice house in the end, expensive, a valuable house that, so.
There's a
Hmm.
couple organizations that do things similar to that. The first one that comes to
Yeah.
mind is Arched Cabins LLC.
Yeah.
They're based out of Texas, but they basically give you, I'm gonna put a link in the chat. They do these prefabricated arch walls, and they give you the plans and they give you all of the things that you specifically need, but they don't ship you all the things that you could locally get at a Home Depot or Hammond Lumber to cut down on shipping cost. I'm personally looking at that for Swans Island right now in terms of getting anything out there. Um,
And
So
it would,
there are companies in Maine that are building ADUs off-site and transporting them to your home. You can look at dooryard.us.
Sure.
They make their stuff, I think, over in Norway. But if you go on their website and look at their catalog, the smallest one that they offer as an ADU is 840 square feet, and the price is listed at 300 to 350, and that does not include your groundwork.
yeah. I mean, we need a company like that that's located here. It would give employment to people in the winter, could be built inside and be moved within, tens of miles rather than from Norway, and there's grants for enterprise development. And I mean that would be a great project to try to set up something like that locally, to
And I talked about that with another person in that field a while back, and they said also part of the deal is you'd have to really generate the market here in order to justify it because of you can only move these things so far. Like if you're located in York County, you have a much bigger built-in market as far as transporting your thing than you do if you're in Eastern Hancock or Washington County to transport how many units are you going to get in a market here? So there's a lot of sticking points and a lot of different models that we have. And that's why I'm probably wrong, but I keep going back to this site stick built ADUs, but do it with one contractor on one model so that you can kind of get that hybrid economy of scale built in.
Yep.
Yeah, no, you do something, especially with the pre-approved designs and that
Yep.
aspect too.
Right.
Get
It all
through the
makes sense.
permitting process. Yep. Greg, you took a tour of the zero energy homes that Caroline has been working on, and what's what's their price point that they're aiming? I know they have one for sale for 275,000 um for I think 800 square foot. And I know they're
Yeah, I
looking
thought.
to find a source for a place to manufacture them locally. So, do you have any other details as far as what they're aiming for price per unit?
No, so unfortunately, I was not able to take one of their
Oh,
tours.
you weren't. Okay. Yeah. And
No,
I
I
wasn't
wish.
able to make it either. Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah, I was unavailable those couple days. But Caroline did say that I forgot for how much longer she still could organize something like that. So maybe it's something that's worth reaching out to her about. And are you familiar with zero energy homes, or have you heard about what they're doing in this region?
Yeah, I've actually done a fair bit of research on them. One, because I'm interested in the concept,
Yeah.
and also from knowing Caroline and from building and just thinking about whether that it's something that is really affordable. And I'm not convinced that it would work as as an affordable home. Um, but maybe I don't, I haven't looked at their detailed budgets or anything like that.
Yeah, and no other
But
updates
I'm
that I'm
always
aware
sort
of
of
as far
curious also,
as.
like, is there a target cost to affordable homes? Because I mean, years and years ago, when I think it's Island Trust was building the houses on Ripples Road and Beach Hill Road. Um, I mean, that was before they had even started. They were talking about 240 to $250,000. And that's got to be more than 10 years ago. So I'm just kind of curious when people talk about like affordable home, what that is,
There's
sort of in a general sense, because it's so vast, right? That span of what's affordable um, to people who are working. So I'm curious when you think about a target number, as I listen to some of the per unit costs, and you know, people are more talking per unit rather than square foot now. Um, I'm just curious.
Well, here you're probably competing against mobile homes, where, somebody could buy some land for, $30,000, buy a mobile home for 50 or 60. I'm not sure what they cost, bring it in, drill a well and stuff, and you have a setup for 120,000. But, it's not the development that anybody wants to see in a town. It's people want to have nice houses that are going to get more valuable over time. And it's just kind of sad that, the same effort to build a mobile home could be used to build the components, which could build a nice house, so, but I think that's probably the level of affordability that a real person is deciding between trying to find just any place to live. The lowest cost is a mobile home, and the other things, 300,000, 400,000. I mean, that's probably out of reach for, most people.
I also know some folks who are doing yurts, and they have 3 to 4 season yurts in the way that they've set it up, and they've lasted decades, at least on Swans Island. And they live and use it. And the interesting thing that I've been hearing about that is it's easier to maintain or replace parts in terms of housing maintenance, because it's something folks put together, but the parts are more easily accessible and replaceable. And that has been a lower cost point. And while I wouldn't advise anyone or everyone to do this, 2 guys in their 40s put it together years ago, over a couple weekends.
You know what I've had some success with is for in the seasonal rentals to have an RV, to develop a lot. When I develop the lot, I have a normal a septic system and well and everything built for a house. So in the future, a house could be built there. But then have an RV that's used in the summer for seasonal rental, and that doesn't take away from the existing housing stock, and it's suitable for tourists in the summer, but you obviously wouldn't want to use it in the winter. And so that's kind of a way to not, eat into the housing stock that's there, but still be able to bring tourists and revenue into the area. So it's similar to a yurt, I guess.
Yeah, I'm also curious and looking more into, I guess, the average cost to fix up a home to make it more livable. I mean, I really haven't seen a ton of homes around here that are in need of, drastic repair, but it's certainly an option as far as identifying homes that could be rehabbed for a lower cost point and then, turned around and given to someone as an affordable place to live.
And I
Another
think
model.
also, oh,
Go ahead.
I think affordability also is often just defined as the difference between the housing prices and the area income. And the housing assessment that we had done in Winter Harbor in Gouldsboro last year, and mind you, this is data that's already old now, but there was a summary on the affordability gap, and they compared home prices along the water in Gouldsboro and then also inland, where it's obviously cheaper. And at the time, the median sale price for inland homes, 254,500. But when you have an area median household income of only 63,000, you were still facing a $35,000 income gap for what would be affordable, or if you'd be able to afford that price. So prices would have to be almost half of what they are in order to be affordable for the typical median household income.
With the interest rates high now, it's gotten so much worse for people too.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And in Hancock County, I think part of the presentation I gave Ander, that gap was almost 70,000 as far as the price that was affordable versus, what homes are selling for.
Yep.
And Josh, yeah, I imagine the coastal homes are,
So that's not
one and a
even,
half
we're not
times
even
that
looking at
price.
that. Just take that away.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically the affordability is $140,000 home from that study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's assuming a
That
10%. Do you have a 10% down payment and 7.1%
Yeah.
mortgage?
Yep, exactly.
and that's a mobile home.
Right now it is, right. Yeah. And then you get into the
Yeah,
mobile home. Nothing against mobile homes. I lived in one till I was 5, but that does not add long-term value.
Yeah,
That's a depreciating asset.
Depreciating asset.
yeah.
It's not a cycle that is overall beneficial to the people or the area. I mean, I can see plugging holes with it. If it's necessary, it's necessary, but
Yeah.
in the long run, it's not the best way to go.
I know. Yeah, I mean, I'm not I'm certainly not advocating for mobile homes. I'm completely against them too. But
Yeah.
just in theory, there's no reason why you couldn't build a house for that amount of money, 150,000. You know, you the lot and the site work, maybe 50,000. The components of a house, I mean, I guess, and the slab, 100,000. A
Yeah.
1,000 square foot house, something like that, that looks nice, looks like a stick-built house, and that's 150,000, for the developer's cost.
Yep.
So
I'll be interested to see there's that 100 plus unit project in Hancock that's currently under construction of mobile homes. And I'll be curious to see how those are filled and I guess long term we'll see how it performs. But um it's something at this point. And I'll be curious also to see what
Is
those
that supposed
are
to be all
going for.
owned in there or what? It's also one of the things like with larger mobile home parks too, is like private equity companies are buying them up all over the country and then
Yeah,
just jamming up the rental prices and creating further problems. So, I mean, that's not as much of an issue here because you don't have that many spaces to add that many units, like a one-off trailer everywhere. But the one in Hancock Heights, that's owned by a multi-state corporation.
wow.
Not
Yeah, and
not
there've
the
been
new
not
one, but the one that's just up from White Birches on Route 1.
yeah.
gotcha. I think that's where the model of the occupants of mobile home parks, pitch come together and purchasing when they're up for sale has become more of a popular way to move forward when they do become available. Because to your point, yeah, they are being purchased and either be converted and
Yeah,
something more
but they did that
more pricing.
up in Bangor earlier this year. They were able to do that, but I think that they received a lot of money from either state or
Mm,
local funds to do it, and I don't know how sustainable that model is in the coming years, given how much tighter budgets have already become and probably will continue to be.
right. Yeah. This one in Hancock, at least from everything that I've read so far and what I know of, it's for 55 plus um, households, and I think they are all individually owned.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just put the link in the chat to that one, and everything that's been mentioned is also going in the meeting notes. I do know someone who owns a property in Hancock Heights and lives there year round. If there's any questions, she's a young woman who moved off of Swans Island and has family out on the island, but she lives there year round and works in the area. So if there's any questions, I can bug her about in terms of how that location is working.
And but that has a combination, right? Some are owned by the company, some are privately owned, but all the spaces are rented, right? That's the way the model works in those things. They might own the trailer, but they don't own the space the trailer's on.
Oh, yeah, the land.
Yeah.
Andrew, while you're here, I'm curious to get your thoughts just on other, the conversation we've had or just other needs, ideas, thoughts moving forward from your perspective and your area of work.
I don't know. I mean, I think
You're on the spot. If you don't have anything, that's fine.
right.
But it's fine.
No, I mean, I'm just looking at the coastal estates, uh, which is not, I think, of course, what was initially the image that was initially set out when this development was being drafted. But I was also thinking about transportation. or just transportation in general is a big barrier for, across the state, not only for adult education students, but and thinking about the idea of having these units. And Josh, your suggestion that having similar units built at multiple places within a town rather than clustering of houses, which I think for a lot of people would seem more appealing. But then also thinking about transportation and getting people off the peninsula and to work sites and that type of thing. So I don't, I'm not thinking that that's an issue for this group to address, but when you ask what else am I thinking about, that's one of the pieces that comes to mind. That
Yeah, that's certainly tied in. I guess we want to circle back to NBRC, how this started. I submitted an application on behalf of HCPC that would partner with Downey's Transportation to, one, do some outreach and education about their service, to hopefully expand year-round ridership and investigate opportunities for that, but also to further study rural transit options and look at other models in other parts of the country and compare them to what we're doing here and identify gaps in the system that we currently have, to your point about where people work, comparing to where people live and how they're getting to and from, where do those gaps need to be filled. So that's all part of that project, as well as, getting some money to design some public bus stop infrastructure would be part of that as well. So it's certainly very interrelated. I know in my last job, I worked for a market research company that was primarily involved in affordable housing, but I would travel all over the country to help with market studies and housing needs assessments. And a big component of that was identifying all the community services in the area and the public transportation in the area, and then, having that conversation about access, and affordability. So it's all connected.
That actually might kind of be solved in the next 10 years that, electric cars, as the battery prices are coming down, they're have the potential to be able to be sold for like $10,000. It's in China right now. They do that. And if the state would build up the electrical infrastructure, there's no reason that transportation might not be, you know, 20% or 25% of what it costs now to run a normal car, maybe. So,
it also seems like if there were something like bus stops, a few places within a town rather than at one centralized community housing, it might encourage other people to use public transportation as well. So I think about with the buses on MDI, that there are many places that you can stop. You can ride your bike to a bus stop, put it on the bus, get to town, get your bike off, and that type of thing. Obviously, their town, sort of the Bar Harbor Center, is a little different than what I think of as RSU 24 district, which is pretty spread out. But that model to me, I've always sort of wished that there was more public transportation that was easily accessible to people, with multiple stops and that type of thing. So,
Yeah, part of this project, at least from my end, would be taking a deeper dive into the existing system and talking with Downey's Transportation to find out what their capacity limits are and how they can add to it potentially and where new stops should be created. I think that's a big part of it. Also mentioned as part of the housing needs assessment we did, one of the web applications that we created is an interactive map that I will share a link to that overlays existing public bus stops throughout Hancock County, Downey's Transportation, with identified community services all throughout the county. And so another way to look at where housing, I guess, should be relative to the existing infrastructure. That was kind of the genesis of that idea. But also at the same point, it's looking at services, looking at public bus stops and identifying, you know, this is where people live, this is where the bus stop is, yet, a Walmart or a pharmacy is still you know, maybe with half a mile away, there's still gaps there. And so, um, yet another tool. And I'll share that link. Olivia, do you want to talk about our plan for next month and then maybe moving forward, any other ideas? So we have 5 minutes
Yeah,
left.
I believe Pam from Island Workforce Housing will be talking about there's too many places, nonprofits that have island in the title. But she will be joining us and talking to us about the Oliver's Ridge project and the upcoming project that they have in Stonington. So I think in our follow-up from this meeting, we can include links to those projects so folks can prep questions or specific things for her if they want to. But she's excited to share what they've been able to do, especially in the realm of workforce housing and navigating that in Deer Isle and Stonington. But kind of following up from the developer summit and having had multiple meetings of this group, are there any specific things that are coming up for folks that they would like to dive more into? We've talked regional housing trust, we've talked transportation, we've talked the average price point or target point, as well as pre-builds and other potential options for decreasing cost while still investing in housing in a community that is not depreciating at the same rate that mobile homes would.
I'm really interested in the pre-built aspect to see what's out there and what they cost and how practical they are. And I could maybe do a 5-minute presentation or something, do some research if you guys wanted or not.
Yeah, that sounds like a good topic to look into.
Yeah. I'd love to continue the topic of the Regional Housing Trust and see. I know that when we had our land trust MLTN conference, that there's somebody from a new Kennebunk Housing Trust that is interested in being a resource for other housing trusts. So I could follow up with her and see if she'd be willing to do a presentation, or at least be part of the conversation.
Yeah, definitely put her in touch with Olivia and I, and we
Yeah.
will hopefully arrange that at some point in the future. That would be awesome.
Okay.
And yeah, I plan on doing more research into that and getting more conversation around it because it's a multi-municipal idea at this point.
Yeah. And there's a new housing trust starting up in Rockport area, Camden Rockport area. And we are working with them on selling them a lot or giving them a lot, which has an existing home that can be fixed up, and then they're looking to do additional units. But right now, no staff. It's all board and volunteers, but they're looking to have a part-time executive director. So that's another one that's housing trust that's just starting up. So there um, might be good to have some conversations with them and see what their approach is to getting it off the ground. So
Would a
Yeah,
panel of housing trust folks be interesting? It would be cool to talk with kind of the expansion of the island one into Lemoyne and Trenton and kind of their decisions there in terms of becoming more regional, or focusing specifically on talking with the Kennebunk folks and then maybe seeing what the Camden and Rockland folks are interested in.
yeah, I think it'd be great to hear from a variety of folks. So, and I don't know if that would be, the place would be for this, this forum or to set up another sort of gathering
Or
for
we do a
folks to.
potential workshop idea or something maybe separate to get a
Yeah,
larger
exactly.
audience.
Yep, for a larger audience, exactly.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a great idea. Excellent. Is 11 o'clock? Unless anyone else has any parting thoughts or ideas. That was a great conversation. Bob and Josh, obviously, thanks again for attending the summit, for your feedback. Andrew and Alan, keep coming back, keep you in the loop, share your ideas and thoughts. This was all really good stuff and a lot of ideas to move forward. So really appreciate it all.
Okay. Yeah.
Next
Thanks for
one is
having it.
scheduled. Yeah. Next one's in November. I will have to double check the date to see how closely it overlaps with Thanksgiving and the holiday. So maybe that will be potentially rescheduled. And pushed back a month. I'll let you know how that goes when we take a closer look at the calendar. But that'll be the next one. And we'll have a topic. Obviously, Pam Duell from Island Workforce Housing will be talking about their projects there for that one. So it should be a good combo. Till then,
Okay.
see you all
Thank you
next
all.
month. And thanks again for
thank
joining.
you.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.